Welcome to episode 39 of On My Studio Table. I'm really looking forward to sharing with you some of the things I've been working on this week. You would have got a glimpse in the photo of my studio table you saw just now. It's been a really interesting week because I got out my sewing machine, which I haven't done very often over the past 12 months. I used to do a lot of machine sewing, but I've been concentrating more on hand stitching. I'm really excited to share with you that things are moving along with our art shed plans. If you've been following along, you'll know that it will be a kind of a posh shed, but it will be an art shed with a studio and gallery space. It will be off-grid. We might put a wood fire in it at some point because it does get quite cool here in wintertime. And I'm really looking forward to it. We've got a builder lined up. We're starting to get some estimates in so we know what we're in for. And it's just becoming closer to reality, which is lovely. My husband has drawn up some plans which we will submit to an architect to be done professionally, because that's what our local council requires. So he's done all the measurements and what the structure is going to be like, and so on. We're just waiting on a quote now for how much it will cost to draw up the plans, because as you know, that does cost a little bit. This is my rough sketch, which I've shared with you before. It's getting a bit ink stained, of what the finished shed will look like. So it's just proving to be a gradual, maybe a slightly slow process, but a gradual process, and we are moving forward. The other thing I've done over the past week is that I've registered the name Artshed Tasmania and also the domain name Artshed Tasmania. I was quite surprised that no one had actually got that before. So they are now registered. I'm planning on a particular kind of a sign to go onto the shed as well, saying Artshed Tasmania. So that will be another thing to look forward to. I've had a great time putting together this video for you. I hope you enjoy it. I hope it inspires you to have a go at a few things. And I must say that I do love being in my studio and working on these projects. Please feel free to ask any questions you would like to ask me concerning the work that I've shared or our art shed plans. I also talk a bit about weed control, which is an important part of our approach to caring for this property. And please, if you haven't subscribed already, if you could subscribe, that would be wonderful. Also to hit the like button and to leave a comment. It's always lovely to hear from you, and I do feel like I'm part of a community. And thank you so much for your support and for watching this video. I've been doing a lot of tearing of cloth this morning, and that's because the next stage in the coverlet of comfort is to weave some fabric strips together to make a background for stitching. So I've just chosen a selection of my naturally dyed fabrics, including some quite dark silk, which I dyed with lac sent to me by a friend. And most of these fabrics are a little bit uninteresting, which makes them great for backgrounds for things. So I've torn them at different widths, basically a bit under 1 inch or a bit over, so that there's a lovely selection that I can just mix together as I weave. So if I take those away, and hopefully not catch my needle, and you'll see what the finished weaving looks like. This is going to join to the bottom of my comfort coverlet. It was supposed to be along the sides, so it was going to be quite a long piece just for this section and the log cabin section at the top, which I showed you last week. But I thought I might just do it at the bottom because it just seems to echo a little bit the log cabin section at the top. And then when we do the side pieces, which will be quite long, as I said, we'll do them in sections anyway, so I can just adapt that to the extra length that I've got here. So I'm just doing the last little bit of invisible baste to hold it down. All these rows have been invisibly basted right along, And if I show you the back, you might be able to see it has long stitches on the back and tiny stitches on the front, which you really can't see unless you look really closely. That's partly because I've chosen a soft grey thread. It's a Madeira thread to stitch the invisible baste. I first learned this from Jude Hill, but other artists use it a lot as well, including Catherine Chambers and Marion of Marion's World. And it's such a useful thing because once you've basted it down, you really don't need to have pins anymore. And you don't have your thread catching on it when you're trying to do the embroidery and whatever else you plan to do on the next layer. So I've used a combination of fabrics. I have some silk. These two are silk here. This is from a shirt, which I think had a little bit of elastane in it, but it is mostly cotton. The rest are cotton, I think. This one had, you might see, it's out of camera, out of shot. This one here has tiny spots on it. And the other thing about this is that I tried to vary things a little bit so it wasn't totally an expected result. So this piece here, when I had to join it underneath this strip, I changed it to a different cloth and a different colour because I just wanted it to look a little bit random. I didn't want it to look too regular. This silk that I'm stitching into right now is a large piece that I did, given to me by a friend who has since passed away, and it has a little bit of extra figuring on it. It's like a silk damask. I've mentioned it before in my videos because I've been using it in a few different projects. So again, these little things make it more meaningful to me because I know who gave me the fabric. The others, because they're dyed or printed with the plants around me where I live in northeastern Tasmania, make this feel like it reflects where I live. And a lot of my work does that. And the theme of this, which I've stitched on the central section, well, which might be the central section, I've put home is here because I really feel that this is where I feel I'm at home and I can metaphorically put down my roots. Some of you would know, if you've been following me for a while, that we bought the land over 10 years ago and my husband built 80% of it himself. He's not a builder, he's actually a retired art teacher, and before that he was a diesel mechanic, but he is very skilled, and he had a big hand in building 2 other houses that we've lived in since we were married, but they were made of timber. This one is a steel house. So it was a whole new learning experience for him. And he finished at age 75, which was his birthday last January. He's still very fit, which I'm very thankful for, and he loves to do things like this. At the moment, he's working really hard, clearing away old fences that have fallen down and got half buried in the ground and tangled with a whole lot of undergrowth. And because we are designated as land for wildlife now, and we would anyway, I think, we feel it's important to control some of the weeds that have come in. Some of it, I think, has come in on the wheels of trucks. We asked for clean dirt when we did our driveway, and we never had any problems with weeds after our driveway was done. But since the road has had some work done to it in the last couple of years, we've been getting weeds on our land. There was one weed which was here, I think, before we bought it. And because we weren't living here, it got away from us, and that's called Spanish heath. And I found out recently that it was imported to use in funeral bouquets, and it was grown in graveyards. Well, it's only about 2 kilometres to the graveyard, so that explains that. Some of it has grown quite big, so Ian has had to pull it out with the tractor. Some of it he can just use the slasher on the back of the tractor to control. But as I said, because of the fences falling down and all the undergrowth tangled up in it, the Spanish heath has been hiding, hasn't it? And now it's escaping. So he's been working on that. we may need to get someone with heavier equipment to help us get rid of it. And then it's a matter of mowing and slashing regularly to keep it under control. We did that on a block we bought in St Helens on the east coast. The paddock section had Spanish heath on it, but it was small enough so Ian could just mow it, and it gradually brought it under control and it didn't come back. So that's what we hope will happen here. There is also some problems with some black wattle, which is a lovely tree, but it is highly combustible. And really, we need to control that if we want to keep the house safe. So the groves that have grown up while we haven't been living here on the cleared side of the land will need to be demolished, I guess you could say. So Ian has asked for help with that, with somebody with heavier equipment than what we have. So we're gradually looking after our place. And as I said, home is here, and we want to make it as good a place as we can. So I finished the invisible baste. I'll keep these pins on the edges, just top and bottom, maybe not on the sides, but top and bottom, just to keep them in line. And the next stage will be doing some embroidery, or as Catherine calls it, fancy stitching. And I'm not sure what that will look like, because I find that I become inspired as I work. And we're given some guidelines each week, but we can interpret them how we wish. So I'm quite excited about that. I'm really looking forward to seeing what will eventuate, and how this will all fit in together with the rest of the coverlet. This is a quilt that I made for my parents' 25th wedding anniversary. So it's a little while ago, because my husband and I have recently celebrated our 50th. And my mum and dad had this on the back of their couch in their lounge room. And it is significant to our family, because my parents emigrated from the Netherlands to Canada when they were first married, and then had 6 children in Canada before emigrating to Australia. And I was in grade 9 at the time. So that's why I used a maple leaf when I made this quilt for them. A couple of my sisters also contributed to this, some fabric and also a pieced maple leaf. And this is the one that one of my sisters did. And it was really lovely to put this together. I did hand quilting on it, so you can see that I did diagonal or squares on point, and just simple quilting around the maple leaf blocks. It was really enjoyable putting this together. Because I was still in the early days of quilting, making quilts, I still was a bit unsure about my quilting, but I was becoming more confident and enjoyed designing my own way of doing things. One thing that I've always thought I should do is do some quilting in the red floral border. So I may still yet do that even after all this time. So I guess you could say it's a work in progress. So this is the room that we plan to use for when we start mini retreats. There'll be 1 or 2 other rooms as well. And it's a very comfortable room, and as you can tell, we do like vintage furniture as well. a lot of fun this week making some journal covers and also some of the inserts for the journals. When I was looking for something else, I discovered some scraps which were left over from other projects, and some of them were needle felted and machine stitched wool fabric, which was from old woolen blankets. And you'll see that on these two covers in particular, and also on the spines of these two. And I thought, why have I left them so long to do anything with? In the same box, I also found a piece of machine stitched and hand embroidered layered fabric, and most of it is silk. There is also some lace in it, I think there as well. And I had hand stitched it and then didn't know what to do with it. So I thought, right, I will make that into a journal cover as well. These three little ones are really rather cute. They fit in the palm of your hand. So they'd be really great to take in your pocket or your bag for some incidental sketching or journaling or whatever it is you would like to do. These would be great for collage as well. I'll just undo the tie. Incidentally, the ties are made from twined strips of cloth, which I learned from Catherine Clothtales, which is by Catherine Chambers. So the covers, all I did was actually join some pieces on to make them big enough, because this piece was big enough for the outside of the cover but not for the flaps inside. So these were a couple of extra pieces that I put on and then folded them over and zigzagged 3 times along the edge to make them really strong. Actually, I think it was twice, not 3 times. So zigzagged twice. And then I made a little book to go inside out of different bits and pieces. So there's brown paper, some old sheet music, a bit of watercolour paper, and some sketchbook paper, and I've just stitched them together with a simple pamphlet stitch, which you can't see on the outside because these actually slide in. So you just pull them out or slide them in. And it's quite a firm fit and it holds it all together really well. And because it's one signature of quite a few pages, how many did I do? I think I did 9, so that's 18 pages and 36 sides. It's quite a lot for a little book. Because of that, because it's a little bit fat, and it probably gets fatter depending what you put in it, I made the cloth twine to go around it to hold it together. I do apologise for the shadows, by the way. It's a very dull day today. We're on our first week of autumn, and today's a bit cold and a bit grey, so I had to use the light. So these other two were done in a similar way. I attached extra pieces to this one also so that there were extensions to make the bits that folded inside, and zigzagged the edge. And I also did a straight stitch, which I forgot to mention, just to neaten it up a little bit. This one was a little bit different. I had some of the other fabric I used inside the flaps for these ones, and then did strips of the needle felted and machine stitched wool to embellish the covers. That was all I had left after I trimmed from one of these books. I think it was that one by the look of it. And then inside I did the same thing. I attached some pieces to make it so that it would fit. The other thing I did, instead of using a cloth lining, I've actually used some vintage sheet music, and I think that's rather a nice touch. And there's also a different type of vintage sheet music inside. I also did some dictionary page. So it's just a nice combination to give you some inspiration if this is for you. All of these are now available for sale at gonerustic.com, and these would make lovely little gifts either for you or for someone special to you. After I'd finished those, I did these. So these are the same size, and I didn't make the inserts for these. So I'll just open one and show you. Again, this is the needle felted and machine embellished woolen fabric, and I've actually left the blanket stitch on the end of this one. This is the vintage doily again, which I attached to it and folded it over so that it would make the extensions for the flap for the journal to slide into. You can see there are two different pieces of leftovers, but on the same substrate. I just did a different kind of embellishing with it. So that's been needle felted. That's only been machine stitched. This has also been machine stitched. And I added 2 rows of running stitch just as a bit of a decorative element and to give it extra strength where the two pieces overlap. The journal is called a Moleskine journal. Moleskine is a really lovely brand of journal, and they do all different kinds. And the paper is not heavyweight, but it's not too thin either. And it's really good for drawing, sketching, journaling, whatever you would like. And the actual cover has a little pocket in the end, so I guess you could maybe put your pencil or whatever it is in there, and then the fold over. This was twine was made from some t-shirt yarn and a strip of wool blanket that was eco-dyed, twined together. This one, as I mentioned, was already machine stitched and embroidered also. And I did naturally dye it, but I think a lot of it is also rust dyed. And that's where you get this lovely warm brown colour. And then I've used other bits and pieces, even a little scrap like that, to embellish over the layers. And then I just added some embroidery as I felt like it, and a little bit of running stitch as well, just to embellish it. And I just let the fabric and the layout inspire me as to what stitching to do. This one I didn't do a flap inside to fold it over because I wanted to feature this lovely bit of vintage doily. And because it was curved the way it was made, it was one corner of it, quite a big one actually, I curved the cover as well, as you can see there. And then I thought, well, I probably should curve the pages too. This is the release paper from what I used to print on this doily. So I laid some eucalyptus leaves on my printer on the glass section, put the flap down, and then fed a piece of fusible web with paper backing through the printer. This is an inkjet printer, and I had to be prepared mentally in case it got jammed, but it didn't, it printed. And when I ironed the printed fusible paper onto the doily, like that, you peel the release paper off and you're left with the fusible web with the print on here. So there's a slight smooth surface here like you find on t-shirts and so on sometimes. But the print also stayed on the transfer paper. So that was a happy accident. And I've saved this and the printed doily for something, and it ended up becoming part of this journal. So this ended up becoming the flyleaf, and then the same at the back. So this is actually a mirror image of this, but because I've turned it around, you can't really tell. I think these spots were gum nuts. The paper is quite a heavy sketchbook paper, so it will take watercolour, glue and collage and all sorts of things. And then of course you've got the flyleaf. And again, I've made some cloth twine. I think this one was cheesecloth and wool, both naturally dyed also. So all of these are in my online shop at gonerustic.com, and you click on the thumbnail that says paper, but I've also put it in the art and decor category because it has cloth as well as the paper. I really had fun making them. It was quite nice to use my machine. I don't use it very often, and so using the machine and then hand stitching some of the inserts was rather pleasant to do.